Are you sick of scrolling through Netflix and Hulu searching for movies that are high quality and family friendly? Christian Cinema has thousands of movies available on demand that you can watch anytime, anywhere. When you sign up for a giving membership, a premium offering from Christian Cinema, you can watch 5 free movies every month. Learn more about becoming a giving member at givingcompany.com/giving membership and start watching great movies today. The other side of the road is safe, where we sidestep being bothered and avoid getting involved. But rolling up your sleeves and boldly going where few dare to tread, that's walking through Samaria. Each week on our podcast, we introduce you to the special few who walk in the spirit of the Good Samaritan. On behalf of the Giving Company and your hosts, David Hendrickson and Dan Riveros, welcome to the Walking Through Samaria podcast. Hey everybody, welcome to the Walking Through Samaria podcast. I'm your host, Dan Riveros, and my co-host,
David Hendrickson.
What's up, man? We're back doing the remote thing, but
we're on Zoom again. We gave up Zoom for a couple weeks, and now we're Zooming. That's all right.
That's all right. Yeah, we're making the best of it. Thanksgiving's coming, we're at our respective homes, it's good stuff.
That's right. So we should do there might be a dog barking in the background kind of disclaimer. A doorbell might ring. You never know. You never know what can happen.
Or my neighbor's kid just going crazy across the street.
Exactly.
Well, we got a special guest today, David. Who do we got?
Dan, this guest is super special to our organization. We've been engaged with her and her husband for quite some time. One of the busiest people that I know. And I think, Dan, this is the first time that we have had a husband and a wife on the podcast, but not together, separate.
Yeah, no, that's correct for sure.
Like they're both, it's Atlanta's latest power couple. So that's why we have to have them separate, because it'd be too much for one episode.
Love it. So in case you guys don't know who we're talking about the one, the only Toni Collier.
Toni Collier, welcome to the podcast.
Listen, I'm so excited to be here. The energy's already popping.
Hey.
So I feel really good about that. And hopefully I'll add another layer here, and we'll really just go all the way up. I'm so excited.
Toni, you were in another country this morning. What's going on?
That did happen.
Yeah.
Man, I was doing really just some listening and learning on the border. A lot of our issues that we're experiencing here in the United States within politics and all the little political division and all of our ideals, oftentimes they can't be solved, but they can be listened to. And so I said, man, I'm going to go on the border and at least just be in proximity. And I don't know what I'm going to do with that information, but at least I have some proximity. And so that's what I've been doing all week, and then landed this morning, and then here we are. Well,
I want to say congratulations, because if there's one thing we have learned, Dan and I have on, what season are we in, Dan? 3?
Yep.
Over the last couple seasons, in talking to people like you and Sam and others, is that we're probably not going to get what we need, and we're probably not going to show up the way we should show up from media, from the news or whatever. Like, proximity and relationship matter more than ever. And in this crazy digital world, it just isn't, it's not solving the problem of awareness and understanding and compassion. That proximity and relationship are it, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, good for you. Well, that's awesome. Toni, I'm going to read your bio.
Oh.
And so that our listeners can hear about all the things you have been involved with. And then we're going to dive into that, directly. So thank you again for joining us. Our listeners are going to love hearing from Toni Collier. Toni Collier is the founder of an international women's ministry called Broken Crayons Still Color, which helps women process through brokenness and get to hope. She serves alongside her husband, Sam, who is the lead pastor of Hillsong Atlanta. Toni is a speaker, host, and consultant that has helped organizations with creative marketing, leadership, student ministry, and strategic planning. She's had the opportunity to proudly stand on stages like North Point Community Church, Chick-fil-A, IF Gathering, the Orange Conference, and MomCon. Toni kills illusions. She confronts the hard things. She takes her challenges head on, then she takes on your challenges. And in this digital age of anxiety, Toni is teaching people all over the globe that you can be broken and worthy and unqualified and still called to do great things. She doesn't want you to just face your demons. She wants you to squash the illusion of your brokenness so that you can live the most colorful life possible on and off stage. Toni Collier, welcome again to the Walking Through Samaria podcast.
Welcome.
Oh my gosh.
I'm tired.
It's like, am I cheering for myself? What's happening?
I'm tired.
You're tired from reading the bio.
Illusion Killer has a nice ring to it.
Oh,
I know. We're gonna dive into that.
That's cool. That's like a whole.
We are gonna dive into that. Hey, Toni. So as we talked about, like you are busy.
Yeah.
You've got a lot going on. I guess one of the things that's good is that the speaking circuit seems to be cranking up again post-COVID or latter stages of COVID. You're doing a lot. Let's start with kind of how the Colliers are doing these days.
Yeah. Well, gosh. So what are we in the fall? About a year and a half ago, Sam and I had this just feeling from God to plant a church. And it was so weird for us because we were itinerant speakers. We knew we would just be living on the road, helping churches and organizations process their big ideas and care for their people well. And so when we kind of got this calling, it was like, man, what is happening? And over time, we both kind of realized that the call to start a church was really something that the Lord had assigned to Sam. And so over the past year and a half, we've been planting together, figuring out church dynamics together, and creating really a brand new model of how to do church well as a couple that both are in ministry. And we're with Hillsong Atlanta. We're part of the global churches, and we planted back in June. And we had this crazy idea or this thought, like, what does it look like for the husband to lead the church and the wife to lead ministries that are outside of the church? Okay. And that's what we've been doing and working on it. It's been a beautiful thing. One of the things I love, though, of course, is that I got to be a part of just building the whole system. And so watching it flourish, coming in as a pastor, as a preacher, coming in and being able to preach at our church has just been such a beautiful thing. So that's what we've been working on. Okay. Being married, planting churches, cultivating our lives, no big deal.
Wow.
Big deal.
Just another week. How about the kids?
Gosh. Oh my gosh. So we have one strong, I would call her a strong-willed blessing. I would say that. It sounds a little bit better when you say it that way. She's 7 and she's in 2nd grade and she is just a firehouse. I just want to say it. She just, goodness gracious, she has more energy than us, which is very hard to imagine. And we're looking forward to more kiddos in the future. And that's what we're doing.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Very good. So let's chat a little bit more about Hillsong Atlanta.
Yeah.
That's where I go, and it's awesome for all of our listeners out there. It's part of Big Hillsong, like you said.
That's right.
But I got to imagine it still felt very much like starting from scratch. Help us understand how those two things sort of work together.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say one of the things that really drew us to Hillsong after a year and a half of praying was this idea that this is a global church. And oftentimes from our small little tiny silos and bubbles in the United States, we kind of forget that there is this whole other realm of Christianity outside of our small bubble of the United States. And Hillsong has 160 campuses, global campuses on every continent except Antarctica. So it is a big machine. But what that means is that
penguins don't need the gospel.
Penguins, unfortunately, just don't get it. It's just really the issue is it's too cold. Okay, can we be honest, guys? It's just too cold.
That's fair. I think that's fair. Yeah.
And what's cool about being a part of a global mission is that, we know that local problems demand local solutions. And so each global campus really focuses on what's needed in its local context. So there's a lot of autonomy. Pastor Brian, our global senior pastor, always says, there's this canvas, there's this Hillsong canvas, but you get to paint inside of that canvas. And so, that's what Sam's really done. he's had such a passion for years and years and years, working with big churches like North Point and Orange and Global Leadership Summit on diversity, inclusion, equity, working with the youngest daughter of Martin Luther King Jr., Bernice King, on this idea of inclusion and what does it actually look like in Atlanta, the birthplace of civil rights movement, to have a church that says, well, let's just really try to start unified. Like it's a little bit harder, okay, to become unified, to become diverse, to become a place that values equity and inclusion when you've already built it. But what does it look like for us to build it on the forefront? And so it's been lovely doing that. It's been lovely saying, we're not going to correct the worship and the music. We're going to start with a diverse approach where there's CCM and gospel meets, right?
Yeah.
So it's been beautiful. So it's been great. Yeah.
What has been, have you had any, like, we were talking about this before we started recording, like sometimes the stories out of churches these days aren't the best that we would want, you know, and unfortunately those are the ones that make the headlines. So it is what it is. But any shockers or you know, obstacles that you and Sam experienced that you just didn't expect?
Yeah, absolutely.
Parking.
So a week.
Parking.
Yeah,
would that be one?
Yeah, absolutely. Oh my gosh. I don't know, being in the heart of Atlanta, you know, just trying to figure out where do people put their cars? I mean, that's a real big deal.
Yeah,
but even just like media and stories around Hillsong Global was a shock to us. I mean, we are just brand new to the family, the global ministry, and having all these stories come out and pastors and the crazy thing about it is it's not just Hillsong. I mean, it's almost the entire Christian church is under attack for, if we're going to be honest, some right reasons and some made up reasons, you know?
Yeah,
and it's interesting because at the end of the day, we've got news, we've got media. We see, you know, Waffle House went through their whole thing. Chick-fil-A went through their whole thing. Girl Scouts of America. Don't know if you guys remember that whole thing. Yeah, you know, there is going to be these imperfections within the Christian church and outside of the Christian church and faith-based organizations. The question I think that we have asked ourselves and even challenged our congregants is not, what have you heard on the news? It's what have you heard from God? Where is God leading you to go? And how is he leading you to dwell? And when it becomes a little bit more personal and not about propaganda and media, then it becomes, well, where is God calling me? And am I even in a right relationship with him, in an intimate relationship with him to actually hear from him? And what we've seen that's been surprising is how much support we've gotten, even in the midst of all the crazy media stuff that really, I mean, happened before us, you know? But what's been cool is that we've seen people come to the church and say, oh, wow, like, this church is really about my own personal relationship with God, not the media, not the flashy stuff, not the VIP seating. We're just like, we don't care about the program. Worship may go over. This hour service can turn into a 3-hour service because it's not about any of that. It's about us being, you know, the hands and feet of Jesus within the four walls, but within our own hearts and minds. And so it's been really shocking and beautiful. It's been unlike any other church that we've been a part of. And we have been a part of lots of churches and preached to lots of churches, but I haven't seen one this free and open and unbridled. It's really a beautiful thing.
So, you know, Toni, I love, sorry, Dan, I didn't mean to cut you off, but one other thing for Toni, you know, I love the way you talked about that, the imperfections are a reality. Yeah. And as we were talking before the recording, I've been listening to the Rise and Fall of Mars Hill podcast. And Dan, as you know, we're always going to figure out how to bring up sports on this podcast. So Toni, you know, it's for all of our listeners, I would take Toni's counsel on this. Like, listen to it if you think you're up for it. And like, if you're not up for it, I wouldn't listen to it because it's really tough, but it's enlightening for sure. And you'll learn a lot. But, you know, Toni, they talk about Willow Creek, and Rhonda and I went to Willow Creek. Here's what they talked about, Dan. You're not going to believe this.
Let's hear it.
One episode was dedicated to Indiana basketball. Like, that's where I went to college. I was there. I was like, I can't get away from anything on this podcast. They're talking about all my historical stuff. But what they say on the podcast, the reason I'm bringing this up is even Christianity Today and Mike, the host, said God still showed up, like despite all of the bad stuff, God shows up in broken places. And I think that's probably something we all need to remember.
Yeah.
That's really good.
Well, before we touch on Broken Crayons Still Color, to those of the people who don't live in Atlanta, they probably don't know what a legendary building Hillsong is actually in. Yeah, this place has been like one of the top clubs in Atlanta for a long time. I mean, it switched owners and switched names, and it's still a club. Hate to admit it, I was there.
Yes, it is.
I was there a couple of weeks ago.
I love that for you, Dan.
So is there any remnants of the club scene in Sunday morning?
You want to talk about a remnant? All right, yeah.
That's so good.
Family. We're in the former Club Opera, Hello Somebody.
Now Club Domain.
And now Club Domain, as well as the Midtown Beach Club. I mean, the name changes. Let's just be honest here, okay? Depending on the event, and it's crazy. We love it. Like, it is the best. I mean, we are talking about, a club turned church in less than 12 hours every single week. And it's just beautiful. There's a disco ball just shining so bright right over the altar. And what's beautiful about it is that, I mean, sometimes we get scragglers. They're like, oh, what's this? Like, let me come and check it out. What's this? And they're like, boom, it's a church. And we're in there worshiping for an hour and a half.
That's so funny.
But I remember when we first got in there over the summer, we had a 4 p.m. We had like a 4:30 service, and the Midtown Beach Club was still on and popping during the summer. And we got out a little late one time, and our congregants exiting the church ran right into the Midtown Beach Club attendees, and that was interesting. They were in full-on beach gear in the middle of downtown Atlanta, and gosh, that was just beautiful. But it's just good, man. What I love so much, and this just goes back to, this whole idea of media and the world and secular spheres and Christian spheres. It's like, really at the end of the day, we were all raised in this space where we thought church was a place for saints, where we have to stay inside of the 4 walls and protect ourselves from the heathens out there. And what I love so much is that this is a space with equal dwelling, where 12 hours ago, it served a different purpose with a different group of people. And we are no different. We are all crazy, ratchet sinners, living our best and most glorious life, doing our best to point ourselves back to Jesus and live a life of sanctification. But it just makes us feel more normal, which we should be, And I love it. It's my favorite. You find random things. It's great.
I might have to do a tour. Just hit it Saturday night and go ahead and stay.
Oh, please.
Stay on Sunday.
Yeah, Dan,
stay right on over. Slumber party right at the bar.
Yeah, you can't count your club attendance as church attendance. Like, you gotta,
So sorry.
I'll save you a seat, David.
I'll save you a seat.
So,
I'll go.
All right, so let's move on to Broken Crayons Still Color. What was the catalyst for you to start this ministry?
Man, lots of things. Just about 25 years worth of trauma,
Wow.
But I would say that the pivotal moment, the life gate, if you will, in my life was going through a divorce, getting out of an abusive and toxic marriage, me and my daughter, and transitioning from a really toxic church. Speaking of, hello, somebody. I was in a church that was so spiritually manipulative and just really taking advantage and just extremely unhealthy in so many ways. And both of those things happened at one time. And so I lost a lot in a short amount of time and didn't have a job, was a single mom trying to figure out my life here in Atlanta, where all my family's in Texas. I mean, it was tough, but out of that place, when I thought ministry life was over, I would never work in a church again, where I thought God would never use my voice again, he really just did that. He said, exactly what our mantra is, that's broken crayons still color, that no matter what you have in your past, no matter what has just absolutely crushed you, God still wants to make something very beautiful from it. And in fact, he does his best work in the brokenness. It is our, it's the place of refuge and surrender that we go to when we're absolutely crushed. We bow, we surrender in those moments, and God does his absolute best work there. And so it just, I was doing this talk, I was preaching on Broken Crayons Still Color, telling people my story. And person after person is like, you got to do something with this. You got to do a ministry. You got to do a blog. You got to do something. And I'm like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. But eventually God did call me to start a team and start a blog and a Facebook group and an Instagram. And then we started a women's course. And it essentially is just a roadmap helping women process through their brokenness, their trauma, their pain, their divorces, their all the things, and get on the other side to not a perfect life, but a hopeful life. And so, yeah, that's what we did. And that was it. It was like, hey, we got a whole ministry.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hey, Toni, so this is probably going to be a secular question.
Ready for it.
So,
been ready for it.
But this is, Dan will be able to support this. My mind always goes to, now let me preface this. Some of our listeners have heard this. I grew up in a broken home, raised by a single mom. I only have sisters. So I have been, as a man, I have been sort of like, if there are women experiencing trauma, brokenness, abuse, somewhere close by, there's a bad man.
Oof.
You know what I mean? Again, secular statement,
Sure.
right? I'm not speaking as a psychologist or a theologian.
Sure.
But
yeah.
You know, you watch Lifetime, right? There's a bad man somewhere close by.
Yes.
So
lurking in the shadows. Yes.
So even though this is not what we're talking about today, I still want to ask you the question, like, what are the men, the good men, the healthy men? What's our role in? Good. I shouldn't even say our, because you know, who knows if I'm one or not. But what can men do if they're not in the bad category, meaning they're not a contributor to the brokenness, abuse, anxiety, etc.? What's their role in the healing, in the healthiness?
That's really beautiful. You know, I've actually never been asked this question, and it's a very, very beautiful question that super aligns with my story. I would say, you know, you're right. I mean, I had a really verbally abusive father who our relationship now has been redeemed in so many beautiful ways. But, you know, if we were to label, quote unquote, bad men, it started as a kid. Yeah. I was unfortunately sexually abused by male cousins, older guy in high school. And then got into a marriage with a guy, and very verbally abusive, holes punched in the walls, doors ripped off the hinges, you know. And then I have a pastor, a spiritual father, and I'm spiritually manipulated and taken advantage of. And I mean, things were said like, your purpose is connected to me as the pastor. If you leave, God's not going to bless you anymore. You know, really damaging stuff. And those were all 5 instances at the hand of a man. Right. But what's so beautifully redemptive about your question is the same amount of power men have to produce darkness, and we all do as men and women, is really the same amount of power they have to produce light. And I would say my husband, Sam, was a man that came into my life and proved that there was still goodness and disproved that every man had to be bad. Sam not only showed me what real love was, what unconditional love was, but he took care of my daughter and I in financial ways and in emotionally supportive ways that I didn't even think. I was honestly so hesitant. I was like, dude, what do you want? Like, what is it that you actually want from me? Like, why are you treating me so well? Why are you trying to take care of my
something's
daughter?
Coming. Something's
I'm
coming.
like, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? You're going to betray me, you know? Sam paid for all my counseling. Like, he put me back into church, believed in me, poured life into me and said, no, your ministry career is not over. God still has some goodness for you. And then he leveraged his influence and power. He put me in rooms like North Point Ministries. He put me in rooms like Orange because he understood that he had power there and influence there as a male voice. And he said in those rooms, in those leadership meetings, there is a woman who we should really look at. She's got a voice. She's got something to be told. And really believe that. I mean, Sam's an 8. He's not just going to be like, oh, she's amazing because I'm in love with her. He's like, no, seriously. This girl really does have, some great communication skills, all the things. Yeah. But I think those are just, there's so many ways right there that we can support as men. Pouring life back into women, affirming women with your words, being very mindful of safety issues. I was just in a conference of 8,000 people, and the conference leader asked women, in the last 7 days, have you felt unsafe? Raise your hand if yes. Every single woman raised their hand. If you felt unsafe, He asked all the men in the room. 3 men raised their hand, okay? And it's not to belittle or fall into the comparison trap, but it is to say that every day we wake up as women afraid and in fear that something will happen, that we will be taken advantage of, and that we will be put in a compromising situation. And so I think the awareness of that, asking those questions and being curious, leveraging power and influence are all things that we can do if we fall into dominant culture categories, for sure.
So what does it mean to kill illusions?
Ooh.
Yeah.
Well, this is good because I think it applies to almost everything that we've talked about. I had an illusion that God was done using me. Like I was too broken. I had been through a divorce. There was just no way that I was going to be able to be used. That is something that I fabricated in my own mind, probably planted by the enemy. That was an illusion that I had to intentionally kill. God could not kill for me. I had to be the one to say, no, that is something I'm making up. That's not the truth. Oftentimes when we work with women, they have this illusion that hope is gone for them, that they can't rebuild hope, that they cannot rebuild their lives, that it is just truly over. We have to attack those, really what they are, illusions, these ideals, these runaway thoughts that we form into our minds. And we have to not, be sensitive and gentle with these, but we have to flat out go to war with them and kill them. We've created illusions for the church. Well, the church is supposed to be this, and this for me. Actually, no, the church is a catalyst for your own personal relationship with God. Squash this idea that you got to meet with the pastor to be more saved and closer to God. Squash this idea that you somehow are going to get everything you need from the church, from financial to mental and emotional stability to all these things. No, kill that illusion. Come to church, not trying to figure out what you can receive from the church, but how you can be activated by the church. Like there's so many, and come on, like our whole media world is full of illusions and filters and all the things. And I just think we, as leaders, especially as leaders, pastors, whatever, we have to be the ones that kill them, because it's easy for us to fall into these traps where people idolize us, make us look better than what we are. Our Instagram makes us look better than what we are. We have to be illusion killers. No. Let's get the truth out there. Let's get transparency out there. Let's get what's really behind the why out there. And let's live really open lives. And I think that's what I'm going for in every aspect of my life,
I love that. Yeah. I love that. I got to think the book is part of the process of killing illusions. Is that a fair? I'm not stretching that, am I? All right. So we're going to talk about Overcomer. Who is your publisher for Overcomer?
This amazing company called iDisciple. I don't know if you know these guys, but they're fun. They're welcoming. They're smart. I don't know. They're scratchy.
I'm sorry. I shouldn't have asked that question. I just want our listeners to know how much fun this project was. It was just an absolute blast. And anyway, we're honored and thrilled and blessed to be working with you on your latest book called Overcomer. The first thing I want to do, Toni, is let's do a shout out to your co-authors, because this was actually a collaborative. So
yes, it was. So we've got Seva Fields. She is a beautiful Indian woman. She herself she's a single mom now. She's been in an abusive marriage. Her and her family came over here years and years and years ago and got citizenship, and she went to school, and she's just fearless about her relationship with God and letting other women know that you can live a life redeemed after abuse and divorce. Then we have Hope Mcqueen. Yeah. She is a cutie girl. She was single. She just got recently engaged. But she has just a total different perspective. She is white American. She's been single for a while. She's been in ministry for a while. And one of the things that she's battled with since she was a little girl was depression, anxiety. And she really talks about what it looked like to really look anxiety in the eye and say, I may not be able to totally deplete you out of my life, but what I can do is figure out where hope resides in the anxiety, where God can rescue me in the anxiety. And then we've got Natalie Maxi, beautiful Honduran woman. She has a beautiful family in West Georgia, 2 little kiddos, Cohen and Addie. And she talks about anxiety. She came over here by herself as an immigrant, went to school by herself, went to college, specialized in tech and this digital program. She has an incredible mind and extremely introverted, and she has a lot of social anxiety, but she is a powerhouse. She has words that permeate, and she has ideas and design. She's incredibly creative. And I say that, and I list all these things because we were very intentional. This is what it looks like to be inclusive on the front end at saying, people are walking into spaces, they're picking up books and they're saying, if I don't see me, it's not for me. And we want as many women as possible to see themselves in these topics and anxiety and abuse. And so we have these stories that are totally different, but all around the same topic and all pointing to the same Jesus. And it really was beautiful. It's just a beautiful project. It's been really cool.
That is awesome that God brought this group together, really, because brokenness in the past, right? And yet Hope, Seva, Natalie, and Toni all get together, to talk about what's possible. I just think it's a fantastic picture of the kingdom. Yeah. Let's tell our listeners what they will experience in Overcomer, Toni. Yeah. So it's a 20-day devotional study for women. Each of the 20 days you all were intentional about scripture, kind of the story, but then prayer and a note section. How do you want readers to experience Overcomer?
Yeah. What we love about it, again, is that, it's 20 days, it's short, it's cute, it's very beautiful. And I just want to touch on that really quickly too. All of us, all the authors, we've been through counseling, trauma treatment, all the different things. And we got big old gray, brown, tan books on anxiety and overcoming abuse, and had to flip through hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pages to understand what we were going through. One of the things that we wanted to do with this devotional is make it very beautiful, but also very deep and meaningful. And so it's a very beautiful devotional. And I think when we talk about these topics, we think it's got to be dark and gaudy and crazy looking and very scholarly. And what we wanted to do instead was create something very beautiful, like we see all these other beautiful devotionals being made, but the topics be really hard, something really hard that we have to process through. What we want people to do is to try to see themselves in these stories. When they enter into a day, it's obviously, very short and sweet. They go inside of a day 1, day 2, day 3, they read a story, they read something compelling, they read the scripture, and then they ingest it for themselves. Like, we are not trying to be preachers here. We're trying to be guides. And so this devotional is, it's us as guides. It's, think about this. This is what I have been through. Hopefully you can relate to it. But now, we want you to go into prayer for yourself. We want you to go into journaling time for yourself and really ask God what he's trying to reveal and break even on the inside of you as you process through these 20 days. And it's just so beautiful. We love it.
That's awesome. So to carry that forward just a little bit, if you maybe wind the clock forward a year from now, 2 years from now, what do you hope is the societal impact, the kingdom impact that Overcomer has?
Yeah, I think it's that faith and feelings can coexist, that hurt and hope can coexist. I think we live in a very isolated, polarizing world where opposite feelings, opposite ideals, opposite beliefs, they cannot coexist. I mean, it's like oil and water to us sometimes. And I'm just like, can we get a little bit of peanut butter and jelly happening here? Okay. Yeah, can we hold the hard and the holy together? Can we be a people that presses into the complex middle of a lot of our lives and of these topics? And, the big vision, I don't even know if I've told you guys this, but the big vision is that we would have a series of these topical devotionals where we would talk about this first one, anxiety and abuse, but then we go into depression. We talk about shame. We talk about maybe eating disorders or addiction. And we would have all of these devotionals that are beautiful, that point people to Jesus, but also really recognize the hard things. And I mean, we've seen it happen already. As you know, I've been on the road, I've been traveling and speaking, and I can't even tell you, every book sells out every single time when I go and speak to these women, when I go into these spaces with teenagers. They're just like, oh my gosh, I need this right now. I've been experiencing such a high level of anxiety. I need this in my life right now. And I'm hoping that this book will forever sell, because we will forever be honest about the things that we're battling with. And at the end of our honesty, I really do hope that resources like this provide hope, and restoration.
Very cool. So how can people get their hands on it?
Okay, so we've got a little site. Okay, it's on Amazon, but we've also got a site, overcomerdevo.com. We created it, so there's a video there and there's an explanation that you can meet every author. And we loved it because, I mean, again, like we want people to get it because they know they need it. And the only way they can know they need it is if they learn about it and know what it is. And so the overcomerdevo.com provides context as to what they're going to get into. It's some sample pages on there. And then it's just a purchase link. And we try to make it super affordable. It's under $15, but it's something you can go back to over and over and over again when anxiety rears its ugly head, when you're triggered because of a past abuse. You can just go back to it. And it's a little guide, a manual that you can take with you and remember that God's still with you, even if it comes back, you know?
Love it. Overcomerdevo.com.
Yeah.
That is it. You can also get it on Amazon if you need it like in a day.
Yeah, right. Yeah. It can be at your house tomorrow. Let's just be honest. Go on Amazon. Okay.
Hey, so Toni, this has been a really compelling conversation for women and for healing and redemption and a future beyond brokenness. How can people learn more? How could people get involved with Broken Crayons Still Color or find you? How do they do that?
Yeah, super simple. We have an Instagram. It's Broken Crayons Still Color. Super simple. Just type that in. They're right there. We also have a Facebook group that we call the Hopeful Woman. And it's a private Facebook group. We've got about 3,000 women in there, and it is full of prayer and redemption and support. Within that group, we also have a group of prayer partners all around the world, in the UK, Costa Rica, here in the United States, on different time zones, that can just meet with you and pray and just get connected to you. In this next year, we've got some really exciting things coming up. I don't know if we want to talk about that right now, but if you follow along, you will get to hear some of the things that we are putting together.
Awesome. That's awesome. Well, we might ask you for a glimpse in a second.
Okay, good.
I got a couple hard questions before we wind this down. Did you say Sam was an 8?
Oh, all day. 8.
Can we just have a moment of appreciation for the 8s?
Listen, I love them. Justice-driven warriors. That's right. That's right.
Well, I'm glad to hear Sam was an 8. When somebody told me I was an 8, Toni, they said, you know, David, you're kind of mean, but but you do like justice, you know, so like you'll defend puppies.
That's a sharp turn. Okay,
yeah, I'm like, okay, thanks a lot for that.
So, 8s get a bad rap.
Yes, we do.
I know. I don't know what the problem is, family.
There's some twist on bad words that start with 8 out there in the public. You know,
that's what I'm saying.
So good for us 8s. I love hearing that Sam is an 8. Here's the harder question. So
come on.
You and Sam are working in Hillsong Atlanta, which is intended to be inclusive at the beginning, like by design.
Mm-hmm.
You have a ministry that's serving broken women because you were one. And God surrounded you with others who were, and you're like, I just imagine those two things alone, you have seen a lot, heard, read, experienced a lot. You are a busy mom in Atlanta. You're taking care of Dylan when, you know, all kinds of things happen in kids' lives. We've got a global pandemic going on. We have divisiveness. I mean, like the world that you're experiencing and trying to minister people through is pretty crazy, pretty unprecedented, but it probably has always looked that way. It's just our current paradigm. Dan and I put this podcast together to help our listeners kind of rethink how they show up in the world, right? Rethink about what does it mean to truly be a good Samaritan and walk across the road to serve and stand out with people that have had different experiences than maybe you have, right?
Yeah.
So we ask a lot of our guests, we probably ask Sam this same question. Is there a little bit of advice that you would give? Let's just talk to believers for this question about how do we be more intentional about serving and being, I talked about bad men. Let's not say good men. Let's say good Christians, right? Good believers, good Samaritans. What's your one thing that we could do better or do differently as Christ followers?
That's really, really good. I'm going to go back to something that I learned this week as I was on the U.S.-Mexico border in El Paso and visiting Juarez and all these churches. Something I heard that really shook me a little bit, but also kind of encapsulated, I think, the work that Sam and I have been doing. And it was just this line that they said, you can't give someone dignity. They already have it. And then they said, I think for many of us believers, we really do believe that when we come into a space with people that's different than us, who are different than us, or have less than us in our mind, we think that we're bringing God to them, right? Like, I gotta bring God. Like, I gotta have my best Christianese, scriptures ready and all the things. But the truth is God's already there. And I think those two lines are something that I'm really going to meditate on and take with me for just the rest of this year and then even into the new year. And I think it'll be helpful if we recognize that we can't give dignity, that dignity is already inside of the person that God has created. And when we begin to look at people as human beings, whatever they believe, whoever they are, however different they are, with dignity, and our job is just to affirm each other's dignity, I feel like we would level the playing field a little bit.
Yeah.
And especially in Christianity, we're not bringing God anywhere. We don't have that power.
That's right.
We're not bringing God anywhere. God's already there.
Yeah.
We get to go and dwell in spaces that God's created. And I think that'll help us to get God out of the boxes that we have formed. Because I don't know about you. I mean, David, I want to serve a really big God that's beyond my capacity, my understanding, my tender 30 years of living, my skin color, my beliefs. I want to serve a God that's much bigger than that, because if not, then the God that we serve then just becomes one of us. And there's no hope in that, because we are freaking nuts. Okay. We are crazy.
Right. That's right.
I want to serve a God that's beyond us. And I think when we start to enter spaces with those postures, it'll really help.
That's so good, Toni. I'll give you a bit of a correlation to that. Father Greg Boyle, we've talked about him several times on this podcast. He's the founder of Homeboy Industries, which is getting, gangbangers out of gangs in Southern California, one of the most impoverished areas of, I think, the LA area, and getting them jobs, getting them cleaned up, all those things, educated, all those things. And he said so often he's got people that come to the doors of Homeboy Industries and say, God is telling me that I have a story to tell. I've got something to say to these people who are fleeing the gang lifestyle. And his response to that goes something like this: why don't you go back home? And when you feel like you have a desire to listen, we are interested in having you at Homeboy Industries.
Wow.
And I thought, what a correction, right? That's what it is, right? That's what you just said. Like, we're not supposed to have the posture like you talked about, that we're coming in to solve things.
Right.
That's not really how it works. Anyway.
So good.
I love the way you answered the question. If you don't mind, before we let you go, can you give us a little bit of glimpse of what might be coming down the pike for Toni? Like just a little flavor.
Okay, all the things. So first and foremost, I will say we are working on another devotional on depression, and it is very beautiful. And I guess how this is the first phase. I'm going to say the title. It's called Closer: Surviving Depression When Joy Seems Far. And it is beautiful. So I'll say that first. So that's coming down the pipeline. We're trying to go with the fall. We don't know what's going on.
Yep.
But the second thing that I'm working on is my own book. My manuscript gets turned in January. Working title is Braving the Broken with Nelson Books. And so that's craziness. And the third thing is really something that I'm going to say for accountability, because it's like one of those God things that you're just like, no, God, why? But one of the things that the Lord's convicted me over in this past maybe 2 months has been creating resources for the local church. I'm like, what? Wow. We love the church, obviously, but we have seen that the church, again, is not the end all be all for a complete life of restoration. And the church does not have a lot of capacity to help get in the trenches with women when it comes to brokenness, divorce, trauma, pain, abuse, addiction, eating disorders, anxiety, depression, all the things. And so we are just currently in prayer as a team over what that looks like, what that strategy looks like. We've got some meetings set up. And so we want to help churches provide resources to their women, small group strategies for their women to really be able to live a life of hope. And so, so
that's a lot. You are the most productive person I've ever met in my
Honestly, that was
life.
The best compliment I've ever had in my life. That's it. As a three on the Enneagram, calling me productive is, man, wow, that's next level. That's next level right there.
I love that Sam's an 8. I just feel like he and I
know. It's another
step closer in our journey together. Yeah, that's awesome.
I know.
Toni, this has been an absolute blast and a treat, as I knew it would be. So we love being involved with you and Sam. We love being involved with Broken Crayons Still Color. Love what you're doing. Love your story and what you're trying to do with your story. And just can't thank you enough for spending even more time with us this afternoon.
Yay. I'm so glad, guys. Thanks for having me.
Toni Collier, everybody. Dan, wasn't that fun?
It was awesome. Thank you, Toni, so much.
Yeah. Toni, you're going to have to maybe keep an eye out on Saturday nights at the club, what Dan is up to.
Well, I don't know. No. I'm excited to see him, though. I'm excited to see him there. Right upon setup. Very excited about it.
That's right. He can help set up for sure. Well, that's it for today, everybody. This is David Henriksen with my co-host,
Dan Riveros,
on the Walking Through Samaria podcast with our very special guest, Toni Collier of Broken Crayons Still Color. Toni, thanks again for joining us, everybody. Thank you for listening. We'll talk to you next time.
See you guys.
Yay.
For more content like this, visit us at givingcompany.com. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time on Walking Through Samaria.